So in the last video, we built out the settings page as well as the profile page. And what we need to do next is we need to build out the add pet page, because when I navigate to it, you'll realize that we get a 404 page. So therefore, what we're going to do is simply navigate into our app folder and into the dashboard, and then the dashboard here, and then create a new file called add-pet/page.jsx, which is going to create that folder and then that file. And then I can say export default, and you know what, we need to just go ahead and begin building it out. So let me place this side by side. Come on. Okay, so we need to mark this file as use client because we're going to be using quite a number of hooks inside here. So we're going to import the use state hook. We are going to import the use query as well as use mutation, and then we are going to import the use user from Clark Next.js. We're going to import API from convex generated API. We're going to import the button component. We're also going to import the card component and the card content, and then we're also going to import card description and card header as well as card title. And then we're going to import the input component. We're also going to import the label, and just make sure that for the label you select the one that is coming from your components, because as you can see there are quite a number of them. And then we're going to import the text area. So text area, is it small or capital? Okay, small text area. And then we're going to import the select from components. Why select? The select content. We're going to import select item and select trigger as well as select value. These are all coming from components. Why select? We're going to import the checkbox component. We're also going to import a component that we don't have, which is called upload button, and this is coming from our upload service which we're going to be using. It's called @upload_thing/react. We're going to install that, and then next we need to import our icon. So import the paw print icon from Lucid React. We need the upload icon, the save icon, and the arrow left from Lucid React. We need the link from next link. We need the image, so import image from next image. And I've just remembered we also need the image icon from Lucid React. Now because we already have image here, so we're going to rename this into image icon, because that is possible when you're using Lucid React. And then we need to import our loading, so import loading spinner. And then finally we need to import, there's also an icon which is called the X icon. Fantastic. Now in order to continue building this out, I'm going to go ahead and disable the upload button, because we have not yet installed upload thing, and I want us to be able to preview what we are typing out in the UI. So once you disable that, I'm going to say export default function add pet page, and then inside here let's just return a div that says add pet page, and then you can save that, and then we should be able to preview it on the screen. And then as it is reloading, let's go ahead and set up some values that we're going to need. So const router is equal to use router, which is coming from next navigation. Oh, I did not import use router. We did not import use router, so let's select this and then just alt and then upwards all the top up to where the hooks are. And then I've just remembered something else. We have not imported the toast method, so import toast from Sona, just like that, and then we can continue building this out. So next we need to get the user, so destructure the user from use user, and then we can set up our state value. So const is submitting and set is submitting. This is going to be equal to use state, and by default it is going to be false, because by default we are not submitting the form. And then const pet data set pet data is equal to use state, and this is now going to be an object, and it is going to be an object with quite a number of things which are going to be correlating to the data that we have in our schema about the pet. So basically all of this. So therefore what we're going to say is this: the name is going to be an empty string, the type is going to be an empty string, breed an empty string, the age an empty string, the size an empty string, the gender an empty string, description, oops, not what I've just imported, so description an empty string, images is going to be an empty array, and then we need activity level, which is also an empty string. We need good with kids, this is going to be false, and then good with pets is also going to be false by default. And the reason why it's false is because it is going to be a checkbox, so when you check the box it's going to be turned into true. This is a capital K. And then is house trained, this is going to be false, and then medical info is going to be an empty string, the adoption fee is going to be an empty string, and then the location is an empty string, and that's all we need. Now once we have that, then we need to get the current user, which is something that we've done. So current user is equal to use query, then pass in api.users.get user by clerk id. This checks for the user .id. If it is true, then we want to pass in the clerk id as the user.id. Otherwise we want to skip the query. And then const create pet is a function that we don't have. Let me remove that space. So this is going to be a mutation, so use mutation and then pass in api.pets.create pet. Now we don't have that yet, but we're going to create it. And then we're going to have a bunch of functions here, but let me create one that we have already created before. I think it was in the settings page. So const handle input change, this is going to be taking the field and then the value, and then we're going to say set pet data and then check for the previous value if any exists, and then open this up, and then we're going to spread in all the previous values, but then we want to check the field that we are on and then updates its value according to what we have just typed in. Now we're going to have a bunch of other functions here. So handle checkbox change, this also takes in the field and then the checked status. This is going to be as follows: we're going to say set pet data and then once again check for the previous values, open this up. Oops, what am I doing? Okay, open this up, yes, correct, and then spreading all the previous data and then check for the field that we're on and then updates its checked status. And then we're going to have a function here called handle submit, which is quite a long function, but it is an asynchronous function taking e as an argument, and I'm going to leave it empty for now because it is quite a long function and I want us to build the other part of the UI first. Next we're going to check if there is no current user, and if that is true, then we're simply going to return our loading spinner just like that, and then we can begin to work on our return. So we're going to return a div here with a class name of mxauto and then max width -4xl and then padding all around with 6, and then inside this div we're going to now build our header for this page. So for our header we're going to start with a div with a margin bottom of 8. Inside this div we're going to return the link component, which is going to be linking into the /dashboard/profile page. And then inside this link we're going to have a button component. This button is going to have a variant of ghost, and then the class name for this is going to say margin bottom of 4, and then close it out. Inside this button we're going to be showing the arrow left icon, which is going to have a class name of margin right of 2 and then a size of 4. And then right below this, the text for the button is going to say back profile, just simple as that. And then we're going to go below the link right here. We're going to have a div with a class name of text-center, and then inside this div we're going to show the corporate icon. This is going to have a class name of mxauto, margin bottom of 4, size of 12, and then text orange -500, and then close it out. And then right below this we're going to have an h1 with a class name of margin bottom of 2, text -3xl, font -bold, and then text gray -900. And then the text is going to say add a pet, and then below this h1 we're going to have a paragraph that says help a pet find they are forever home. This should be a D, and this has an E. There we go. Now let's save that, and hopefully we should not get an error, but we might because we don't have this function yet. But let's see whether it's going to reload. And there we go. So that is what we have currently, and then we can continue building this out. So we're going to go below these two divs, and then now we're going to create our form, and our form is going to be as follows. So we're going to have the card component, and then the card header, and then the card title, and then this is going to say pet information, and then below the card title we're going to have card description. The card description is going to say provide detailed information about the pet to help potential adopters, just like that. Below the card description, and sorry, this should be below the card header, we're going to have the card content, and the card content is going to be now housing the form, and the form is going to have an on submit, which is going to be calling the handle submit function, which we skipped, remember. And then this is going to have a class name of space on the Y of 6, so space on the top and bottom of 6. So first we're going to build the basic information about the pet, so basic information, and this is going to be as follows. We're going to have a div with a class name of grade, and then grade columns -1, and then gap of 4, and then on medium screens we're going to say grade columns -2, and then inside this div we're going to have another div, and then inside this other div we're now going to show the label component with an HTML4. We want this to link to the name, and the text is going to say pet name, and then we're going to have an asterisk to show that it is required. Below the label we're going to have an input with an ID of name, so that when you click on the label, then the input is going to get highlighted. The value for this is going to say pet data.name, because remember that pet data is an object, so we can use dot notation to get whatever we want inside it, as you can see right there. And then we need to get the on change. So when we type inside this input, we're going to be calling a function here which accesses the synthetic event of E, and then we're going to say handle input change, and then pass in the field that we're on, which is currently the name, and then the value that we want to update, which is e.target.value. So update it with whatever we type in, and then the placeholder finally is going to say enter pet's name, and then close this out. We can save that, and then we can simply copy this div down, because we're going to be doing a bit of copying and pasting. You can see right there that our inputs are working correctly, but the sizes of our inputs is wrong. Let's change the what's it called, globals index.css. Let's just go, here is our input. Let's just go below, oops, what is that? Let's go below this. Let's say that for the inputs as well as for the text area, then we want the @apply, and let's say text-sm. That should reduce its font size, but it doesn't. So let's say right here, let's say exclamation to mark it as important, and there we go. So the input size is just a bit smaller. And then let me also fix something. See how there's no space between the label and the input? Let's fix that. So let's say that for the labels we're going to say @apply, and then let's say exclamation margin bottom of 1, and I think the labels need to be marked as block elements, otherwise the margin will not apply. And then let's see whether that is going to, there we go. I think that is much better. Fantastic. So let's jump back into our form right here, and we're going to go below this div. We're going to have another div. This other div, what is this? So we're going to have another div, and this other div is going to have the label with an HTML4, which is going to be the type, and then the text is going to say pet type, once again marked with an asterisk. Let's change this name to a capital N. Below this we're going to have the select, which is the drop down. The value for this is going to say pet data.type, and then on value change, meaning when you select a different value from the drop down, then we want to pass in the value as an argument, where we're going to say handle input change, and then we want to change the field called type, and we want to append the value. And then below this, we're going to have the select trigger. The select trigger is going to have a class name of width-full. And then inside the select trigger, we're going to have select value, which is going to have a placeholder that says select pet type. And then close it out. And then now we can have select content. So select content. Inside select content, we're going to have select item. Is this not important? Okay, it was. Okay. So select item. We can pass in the value here. The value for this is going to say dog. And then the text, this should not be self-closing actually. The text inside here should now say dog. And then you can copy this down a few more times. This one can say cat. The text is going to say cat. The next one is going to say bird. This is going to say bird. Next, we're going to say rabbit. This is also going to say rabbit. And then next, we're going to say other. So other. This can say other. Then you can remove this last one. And you can add this to be as many as you want. But this is what I have in the demo. This is what I built it using. So once again, we can save that. Let's preview what we have on the screen. And there we go. So I can click this to show the drop down, and you can select an item from there. I think let's make this full screen. It is much better when you preview it in full screen. And then you can maximize this. And then finally, we're going to go, or rather next, we're going to go below the select, and then below two divs, we're going to have another div with a class name of grid and the grid columns -1, and then give it a gap of 4. And then on medium screens, grid columns -3. Inside this, we're going to have a div. Inside this div, we're going to have a label with an HTML4. This is going to be linking to the input that has an ID of breed. And this is going to say breed with an asterisk. And then below this label, we're going to have an input with an ID of breed. And then the value for this is going to say pet data.breed. And then on change, we're going to call our event, and then we're going to say handle input change. We want to change the breed, and we're changing this using what we type in, so e.target value. And then the placeholder is going to say enter breed, just like that. We can close it out, and then we're going to go below this div. We're going to have another div. I don't know what, I think let's copy it because it is similar. We can paste that here, but this is now going to say age, and then this is going to say age, and then in brackets we're going to say years, so age in years. Have the asterisk as well. This is going to be age, and then the input type is now going to be a number, so that on mobile phones it can show you the numeric keypad. The minimum value for this is going to say 0. The maximum value is going to say 30, because I don't know if people have pets that are older than 30 years, perhaps a tortoise. And then the value for this is going to say age. And then on change, we want to change the age field, and then e.target.value. And then the placeholder is going to say age in years, just like that. And then next, we can have a div here. This div is going to have a label with an HTML4. This is going to be linking to the gender, and then the text is going to say gender once again with an asterisk. Below this, we're going to have a select. This select is going to have a value of pet data dot gender. Inside this select, still within the select, we need to have the on value change. This is going to pass in the value, and then we're going to say handle input change, and we want to change the gender, and then append the value. And then we're going to have the select trigger. The select trigger is going to have a class name of width+full. Close it out. Inside this, we're going to have select value with a placeholder that says select gender. Close it out. Below the select trigger, we're going to have select content. So select content is going to have two select items. So select items, 2 of them. And this is not self-closing. I keep doing that. But the value for this is going to say male. And then the text is going to say male. Copy this down, change this into female, and then change this into female, just like that. And let's save that. Actually, let's preview what we have, and there we go. So this is the result for the 3 grids. So age in years, and then the breed, and then the gender is right there. Fantastic. Now we're going to go below these 2 divs. we're going to have another div with a class name of grid, and then grid columns -3, or sorry, -1, and then gap -4, and then on medium screens, grid columns -2. Inside this, we're going to have a div, and it is similar to the label and select here. So let's copy it and then paste it here. This is now going to link to the size. This is going to say size. This is going to say pet data.size. Then here we want to change the size, and then the select value here is going to say select size. And then let's copy this down one more time. This one is now going to say small. The text is going to say small. This one is going to say medium, medium. This value is going to say medium. This is going to say large, and then the text is going to say large. And then right after this closing div, we're going to have another div, and let's copy this label and select because it's going to be faster. So copy and paste it here. Now this one is going to say activity level, activity level. The text here is going to say activity level. The value here is going to say pet data.activity level. The input we want to change is the input of activity level. Make sure that you spell it correctly, otherwise you're going to have issues. And then this is going to say select activity level, and then this one is going to say low, and the text is going to say low, and then medium can remain to be medium, and then this one is going to say high, and then this one is going to say high, just like that. And then we're going to go below two divs. We're going to have, now this is going to be the location data. So below this we're going to have a div. This div is going to have a label, and it's a label with an input. So we've already done it on top, so let's just copy it because it's going to be faster. So we can copy, let's copy this one actually, because this one is a type of number. We don't want that. So right here we can paste it here. Now this one is going to say location. The text is going to say location. The ID here is going to say location. The value here is going to say pet data.location. Input change here, we want to change the location, and then the placeholder is going to say enter city or area. And then we can copy this div. Actually, we can copy even the comment. We can go below it. Now we want to change the description. Now therefore this is going to say HTML4 description. This is going to say description. The ID here is going to say description. The value is going to say pet data description. Here we want to change the description, and then the placeholder is going to say describe the pet's personality, habits, and any special needs ... And just realized I made a mistake. This should not be an input, this should be a text area, because we're giving a description, so it needs to be like a bit wider, so that at the end of this we can append the number of rows that we want for the text area, and we can just set it to 4. And then below this div, now we want to be able to upload the images of the pet. So we're going to have a div here with a label which doesn't have an HTML4, which is just going to say pet images with an asterisk. Spell this correctly. And then below this we're going to have a div with a class name of margin top of 2. And then inside this div we're going to have our upload button. Remember, we disabled it, so I'm also just going to comment it out, even though I know that we're going to have, or rather we're going to need many more props inside here, but because we disabled it on top and we have not set it up, then let's also disable it right here, so that when we need it, then we're going to get it. Now what we need to do is, right below this we need to go ahead and display the images. So we're going to say pet data dot images dot length is greater than 0. Only when that is true, that's when we want to have this div that we're going to build out, which is a div with a class name of margin top of 4, and then grid columns -2, and then gap -4, and then on medium screens grid columns -4. And then inside this div we're going to say pet data dot images dot map, because we know that now they exist. We want to extract the URL from the images, and then we want to get the index, because when we are uploading to upload thing, we can retrieve the URL of that particular image, and then the index here is just going to work as our unique key. So we're going to return a div with the key of index, and then the class name for this is going to say relative, and then close it out. And then inside this, we're now going to render the image component from Next.js. The source for the image is going to be the URL. The alt attribute, in case the image fails to load, we just wanted to show a dynamic value. In this case, we're going to say pet image, and then we want to append the index +1, so that it's going to show like pet image number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on and so forth. So we have +1 here because arrays are 0 based, so you don't want to say pet image 0, you want to say pet image 1 as the first image. Now, still within the image component, we need to give a width for the image here, so we're going to say 200 and the height of 200 as well. And then the class name for this, we're going to say rounded-large and object.cover, or -cover, not .cover. And then now below the image, we're going to have a button with a type of button. And then the variant for this is going to say destructive. The size for this is going to say small. And then the class name is going to say absolute, and then top -2, and then right -2. Right has an H, so right -2. And then when you click on this, so we're going to be calling a function here where we're going to say set pet data, and we want to check for the previous values that are already there. And let's close out the button so that we don't get that error. So we are checking for the previous values, and then we are passing the previous values, but then we want to set the images and say prev.images.filter. And because we're not interested in returning anything, you can just return an underscore and then the index of the image, and then you can say that we want to get the index which is not equal to the index of the image that we click on. So that is going to successfully remove it. So this button right here is positioned absolute within this div, so that we can click on this button to remove an image if we don't like it. Now within the button, we're going to be rendering the X icon. This is going to have a class name of size-5, and then close it out. And I think we should be able to save this because we already have this data, because the pet data of images is currently 0, so we're not really going to see anything on the screen, but we have an issue here. So let's see what it's saying. It says pet data.describe, so that is description. Why is this on line 241? Pet data. Okay, so we should remove this pet data.description. There we go. And then as that is reloading, we can continue building this out. So you're going to go below this div and below this closing, and then below 2 divs. Now we want to have the characteristics. So characteristics, and then below this we're going to return a div. This div is going to have a label with a class name of text-base, and then font dash medium, and then the text is just going to say characteristics. Below this label, we're going to have a div with a class name of margin top of 3, and then grid, and then grid columns -1, gap of 4, and then on medium screens we're going to say grid columns -3. And then inside this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of flex and items-center, and then space on the x of 2. And then within this, now we're going to render out the checkbox icon. Sorry, not the icon, but the component that is coming from TsbSankara. The ID for this is going to say good with, it should be capitalize it, so good with kids. And then the checked state for this is going to be dependent on the pet data dot good with kids, and remember that by default it is false. So by default this checkbox is not going to be checked, but when we check it, so we're going to call the onChecked change. When we check it, we want to pass in the checked status as an argument, where we're going to say handle checked change. Remember the function that we created, check, what is it, not check but checkbox, handle checkbox change. This is going to say good with kids because that is the checkbox that we're currently on, and then we're going to pass in the checked status just like that. And then below this we're going to return the label, and then with an HTML4 here, we want it to link to good with kids just like that. and then the text is going to say good with kids. Okay, now I think we can save that just to preview it, because for the next ones I want to do a bit of copying and pasting because it's going to be faster. So there we go. So good with kids right here. So when I click on this, it's going to create that check mark. And okay, so it is a bit offset here. The reason for that is because in our globals we have just added this part. So you can remove it if you want, but I'm going to keep it because the number of inputs that depend on the label are quite many. And I do realize that I can revert the styles inside here by myself, but I don't want to do that. So let's just continue. Now we want to copy this div with the class name of flex. So copy and then paste it down. Now the checkbox, this one is now going to say good with pets. So you can just highlight this and then say Control D, Control D, Control D, which is going to add multiple cursors so that you can change all of them at once. So good with pets, just like that. And you don't need to do anything else inside there, except probably change this text. So good with other pets. And then once again, this div, paste it down. Next, we want to highlight this. So highlight and then Control D, Control D, Control D. We want to change this into is house trained. And then the text for this is going to say house trained, like so. And then now below 1 div, 2 div, 3 div, we want to create another section for optional information. Now below this, we're going to return a div with the class name of grid and grid columns -1, and then gap -4, and then on medium screens, grid columns -2. Inside this, we're going to turn a div first of all, and then we're going to turn a label with an HTML4. This is going to be linking to the adoption fee input, so adoption fee, and then the text is going to say adoption fee. In brackets, we're going to say optional because that is an optional thing that you can add. And then the input for this is going to have an ID of adoption fee, not free. Close it out. The type for this is going to be an input type of number. The minimum value is going to be 0, and we want to step by 0.01. So we want to increase the number. If we're going to be using the arrow keys for on the input, we want to increase the number by 0.01. And then the value for this is going to say pet data.adoption fee. And then on change, we're going to call the, what was it called, handle input change. And then want to change the adoption fee input. Why do I write free every time? And then this is going to say e.target.value, just like that. And then we need something else. So the placeholder is going to say equals enter adoption fee. And then the class name for this input is going to say with -4. Now I think we can save that so that it is formatted properly. But now we're going to go below these two divs. We're going to get another div. This is going to have a label, and the HTML4 for this label is going to be going into the medical info. Close it out. The text is going to say medical information, and then in brackets it's going to be optional. Below this label, we're going to have a text area. The text area, it is self-closing. The ID for this is medical info. And then the value for this is going to say pet data.medical info. And then when we change this, so on change, we want to call the E, and then we're going to say handle input change, and then pass in the medical info because that is the input that we're on, and then pass in e.target value so that it captures whatever we type in. And then the placeholder for this is going to say any medical conditions, vaccinations, or special care requirements. So requirements. ... And then the number of rows for this input, we're going to say rows is equal to 3, just like that. And then now finally, below this div, we're now going to have our submit button. So our submit button is going to be a div with a class name of flex, and then justify-end, and then space on the x of 4. Inside this, we're going to have a link, which is going to be linking into dashboard/profile. And then inside this link, we're going to have a button component with a variant of outline, and then the text is going to say cancel. Below this link, we are going to have the button with the type of submit. The disabled state for this button is going to be dependent on the is submitting state value. And then inside this button, we want to check if is submitting is true. Then we're going to return something inside here. And let me just return this. And then if it is false, we're going to return something else. But within this fragment, we want to return a div with a class name of margin right of 2 and then size of 4, and then animate dash spin rounded dash full, and then border dash bottom dash 2, and then border dash white. That is a self-closing div. But now below that div, the text is going to say adding pet ... And then otherwise, inside the else statement here, we want to return a fragment. Again, we want to show the save icon with the class name of margin right of 2, and then size dash 4, and then close it out. And then below this, the text is going to say add pet, just like that. Now we can save that. Let's preview what we have on the screen. And there we go. So there is our inputs. Those are all our inputs. We have our add pet here. We have our cancel right there. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and what did we not do? We did not have the handle submit. So we have not created this function. We have not created this one either. And we have also not integrated the upload button. So I think we should begin by creating our convex function, because our handle submit is also dependent on the convex function right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's jump into the convex and then inside pets right here. And right on top of the file, our first function is going to say export const create pet. Create pet. This is going to be a mutation, and it has quite a number of arguments, which is basically the same as what we have in our schema. So therefore, what I'm going to do is simply copy all of this and then paste it inside here. So we need the owner ID, the name, and these are all required except for the medical information and the adoption fee. And then we don't need the created at or the updated at because we can handle that ourselves. Now our handler function here is going to be as follows. It's going to be an asynchronous function taking the context and the arguments, where we're simply going to say return await context.db.insert. So we are creating something in the database, so we're inserting, and we want to insert into the pets table, and we want to pass in everything that is already in the arguments, so basically all of this, but we want to change is available into true. And you know what, I have is available here, so we need to remove it. So we want to change is available into true. We want to change the created at into date.now so that it shows the current date because you have just created that pet. And then updated at is also going to say date.now because since you're creating it, then it has also been updated at that particular time. So once again, make sure that convex is running so that when I save this, it is going to add that function, and then it's going to do a few things, and then it's going to say convex functions ready. And there we go. So now that we have our create pet function, then we can now jump back into our page right here, and then we can build out our handle submit. So we're going to start by saying e.prevent default to prevent the default behavior of the form reloading the web page. And then we want to check if there's no current user. If there's no current user, then we're simply going to say toast.error, and then we're going to say user not found, and then return. And then now below this, we want to do a few things. So first thing we want to do is validate the required fields. So we want to check for all the required fields and check whether they have been filled or not. Otherwise, we're going to return an error. So const required fields is equal to, and then open up an array here. So name is a required field, and then let's just type or rather copy this down. So name is a required field, the type is a required field, the breed, the age, the size, the gender, and then description, and then activity level. And then finally, we think the location is required as well. And then once we do that, then we're going to say the following. we're going to create another variable here called missing fields. So const missing fields is equal to required fields dot filter, and for every field that we get back, so we want to return the one that does not have the pet data field, just like that. So that means that it has not been filled, but yet it is a required field. Now below this, we're going to say if missing fields dot length is greater than 0, then we want to show a toast notification here, toast dot error, where we're going to say please fill in all the required fields, like so, and then we're going to say return. And then below this, we want to say if pet data dot images dot length is triple equal to 0, meaning you have not uploaded any pet images, then we also want to show a toast notification here that says please upload at least one image, and then once again return. And then below this, we're going to say set is submitting to true, so that now we can handle our try catch block. And starting the catch block, because it is easier, console dot error, we're going to say error creating pet, and then append the error so that we can read out the cause of it. And then we're going to have a toast dot error here that says failed to add pet, please try again. And then for our final block, we are simply going to say set is submitting back to false, so that we don't have an infinite loop. Now let's go ahead and deal with our try block, which is very simple, but it just has a lot to type. So in our try block, we want to create the pet in the database. So we can say await create pet, which is our convex function. And what are we creating? So we want to pass in the owner ID as pet data dot not pet data, but current user. So current user dot underscore ID, because that is the person who is uploading it. So we need to get the ID. The name is going to say pet data dot name, because that is the name of the pet. And then the type is going to say pet data dot type. Why is it not giving me the drop downs? Okay. The breed for this is going to say pet data. I need the drop downs. Okay, dot breed. There we go. And then the age, we're going to say, because age is a number, we want to pass the number, so pass int, and then we're going to say pet data dot age, so that we get an integer instead of like a really long decimal number. And then the size for this is going to say pet data dot size, and then the gender is going to say pet data dot gender, and then description is going to say pet data dot description, and then we have images. You can say pet data dot images, and then activity level, pet data dot activity level, and then next we have good with kids, pet data dot good with kids, and then next we have good with pets, pet data dot good with pets, then is house trained, pet data dot is house trained, and then medical info, pet data dot medical info, and then adoption fee is going to say pet data dot adoption fee. If that is true, then we want to say parse float, because an adoption fee can be a decimal, so it can be a float. So pet data dot adoption fee, and otherwise we're simply going to return undefined. And then finally we have the location, pet data dot location, just like that. And then once we have created the pet, one shot toast notification, so toast dot success, pet added successfully, and then we're going to say router dot push, and you want to push the user into the dashboard / profile page, because they have successfully added a new pet. Probably you can push them into the dashboard page, or rather the home page right here, but I pushed them into the dashboard profile. That was just my preference. Now we can save that, and we are not going to be able to do anything because we need to deal with our pet images. So just like I mentioned before, we're going to be using upload thing. So we can we can just search for upload thing, and then you can open this up. So once you get to their website, it is going to ask you to log in if you're not already, but you can say I'm already logged in. So I'm going to go ahead and say get started for free, and you can see right here that I have a number of apps. So I'm just going to go ahead and say create new app. So create. The app name is going to say PawPrint. I don't know. Let me say PawPrint-YT, because I can't remember if I called the same. I called it the same name. And then this can remain to be defaults. I mean, can't even change them. So create app. And then once it is created, we need some things from right here. So the API key is right here. We need the upload thing token. So you can copy this, and then back inside our workspace, we're going to go inside the .env local file. We can paste this on the bottom. And then we also need the secret key right here. So you can click the I icon here to expose it, and then click to copy. And then you can just say upload thing underscore secret and set that equal to your secret key. You can save that. And then now we need to jump into the documentation so that we can set up this thing. And the first thing that I'm going to do is jump into our page and enable the imports right here. So we need to enable this. My mouse. So enable this, and then we need to find where the upload button is right here, and then enable it as well. Now don't save it just yet, otherwise it's going to break your application. But we know that we're using the Next.js app router right here, so you can click on read more. And then the first thing that we need to do is install this. So copy this and then Ctrl J to open up your terminal. And then inside our installs terminal right here, you can simply paste it in and then enter. And then we have already done this. So the uploading token is already in our env variables. And then next, we need to create this API route right here. So inside app API uploading core, so you can simply copy this. It's quite a huge file, but we're going to do some bit of refactoring. So let me see actually. And actually, instead of copying this, let's just go ahead and build it out, because this has a lot of things that we really don't need. So we're going to go ahead and do the following. Well, this has finished installing. So let's do this. Control KW. Oops, cancel. Okay, let's just close everything to the right. So close to the right. And then let's jump into API. Now inside app rather, we're going to create a new file called API/upload thing/core.js. That is going to create the folder called API, the folder called upload thing, and then the file called core.js. And then inside we're going to say import create upload thing. It's then going to give me the drop down sometime today. No, okay. So create upload thing. This is coming from what's it called? Upload thing /next. Is that what I installed? Okay, so I've not wait, upload thing is right here. So upload thing /next, so that's okay. And then we're going to say const f is equal to create upload thing, just like that. So what we've just imported on the top. And then we need to create our file route. So export const our, this should be small, so our file router. This is the configuration that we're giving to upload thing. So we want to pass in an endpoint. So in this case, our endpoint, I'm going to call it pet images. And you can call this whatever you want. So if you want to call it like profile images, so something like that, you can do that. And it's something similar that we did in our Twitter project. So here we want to call f, which I've just gotten on top, and then open this up. The image properties, we want to have the maximum file size of the image. So max, come on, is it not giving me the drop down? Max file size. Okay, max file size is going to be 16 megabytes, and then the maximum file count is going to be 20. So you can upload up to a maximum of 20 images, just like that. And then outside of this, we want to call on upload complete. Then we want to have this is going to be an asynchronous function, and then I'm just going to get the metadata from our app layout, which is basically this layout file right here. We are getting the metadata, which doesn't really, help us that much. I mean, it's not even going to help us inside this file. but then we can also destructure the file, and then we're going to say the following, that we want to say console.log. So when the upload is complete, we want to say upload complete, and then we also want to say console.log. The file URL is going to be file.ufs URL. That is the file URL that we get back from uploading, and then we're going to say return uploaded by, and then I'm going to pass in the metadata dot user ID. Now user ID does not exist on this metadata, so this is just like just for show but our uploading is going to work. So you can save that, and according to the documentation, the next thing that we need to do is create our actual route. So still within the API right here, so we're going to create a new file called route.js, and then inside this route, what we're simply going to do is just get our file router and then call it inside here. So I'm going to say import create route handler from upload thing next, and then import our file router which I've just created from the core.js file, and then I'm going to say export const, and we want to get post, where or we want to get the get as well as the post. This is going to be equal to create route handler like so, and then the router that we want to pass in is our file router which we've just created or in our core.js file. Now with that, we can jump back into our page.jsx, and then we can fix our upload button. And actually I think we should be able to save it, and we should be able to preview it right here. Okay, so our upload button is technically showing, and it is, where is it, right here, but we need to add some configurations to it before we can be able to preview it. And I think, or is it styled wrongly? I think probably it's styled wrongly. But that's okay. So inside our upload button right here, the endpoint, it takes in a prop called endpoint, and in this case we're going to say pet images. Now why is our endpoint pet images? Because in our core we created the route here called pet images. So if you change this into pet images uploader, for example, then your endpoint inside here should also say pet images uploader. Now why is that necessary? Because if you go ahead into your dashboard inside upload thing, then you can go ahead and find your app. So right here, the app that you just created, and you'll realize that if you go into the files tab right here, it also shows you the route that was used to upload the images. So that is just going to help you to differentiate the images that were uploaded from different routes. Now the endpoint there is the pet images, and then you can also pass on client upload complete. This is going to be taking the res as an argument, and then you can open this up and say const urls is equal to res.map, and then for every file that you get back, you want to return the file.ufs URL, which is basically the file to the image, and then we're going to say set pet data, and then open this up, check for previous values if they're there, and if they're there, what am I doing? If they're there, then we want to spread out all the previous values, and then we want to change the images here, and we want to attach them into prev.images, and then append everything about the URL. So dot URLs, which you have just gotten from right here. This is not a semicolon. The semicolon should be here. Now once that happens, we want to show a success message. So post.success images uploaded successfully, like so, and then still within the upload button, so still within the bounds of the upload button, we also want to show an error in case there's an upload error. So on upload error, then you can access the error right here, one where we can go ahead and say post.error upload failed, and then we want to say error.message, so that it shows us the reason why the upload has failed, just like that. And not, let's make this even better. Let's have this inside a description. So description, how do you do it in Toast? So description, description is going to say error.message. There we go. So that this is going to show up as bold, and then the description is just going to show up as normal font. Now we can save that, and then let's see. I don't know why the button is not showing up. Okay, so you can see that images up to 16 MB. Why is this showing as double S? Did I write anything as double S? Images. I don't have anything as double S, right? I'm going to ignore that for now. Let me see. So pet images, then the route. Okay. Okay. So no file chosen, and then choose files. Did I import this correctly? Upload thing, React upload button. Let me see. Import upload button from upload thing React. Okay, that's okay. And I don't know why it's doing that. Let me try to reset the cache. Well, and then there's also something that we need to fix. There's something that we need to fix concerning upload thing. That's annoying. Is it maybe something that I have in my globals? Let's check this out. Let's inspect. Let's have this button. So the button that is right here, a div, and then the label, and then this is an input with a type of file. But this is for screen readers only. Can we find it? Can we find it? Can we find it? The label here. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and just say that that is probably an issue with upload thing. Okay, so the input is working. So what we need to fix is an issue where when your application is still loading, then upload thing shows you loading ... So because we're in Next.js, we can use a server-side rendered plugin, and we need to put it inside our layout. So inside this very same layout, we first of all need to go ahead and import. It's called what's it called? It's called Next SSR plugin. It's not giving me the drop down. This is coming from @upload thing /react /next SSR plugin, like so. We also need to import the extract router config. This is coming from upload thing /upload thing /server, and then we need to get our file router. So our file router which we created, which is coming from API upload thing core. And then once we do that, then we are going to go right inside the convex client provider, and then we want to render out the next, what is it called, next SSR plugin, like so. And then as a prop, we want to pass in the router config, and we want to call extract router config, and then pass in our file router, like so. And then I think we can now save that. And what this will do is that it's just going to improve the loading times of the button. So I think now we can test out whether we can add a pet or not. So let's go ahead and try it out. I'm just going to fill this in because it's quite a number of inputs. For the description, let's go into random text generator so that you can have a large description. And just copy that. That's enough. Paste it here. And then good with kids, good with other pets. And you know what? That's not true for Scooby-Doo. So adoption fee, you can set that it's optional. I mean, even this one is optional. But let's just have some text. And then let's just paste it here. And then just for the sake of testing it out, let's have the adoption fee at 500. And then for the pet images, let's jump into Unsplash, and then let's search for Great Dane. And then we can just download a couple of them. So save image. So I'm saving these images into a folder that I have that is called PawPrint. So save. And oh, what was the format of that image? That's not good. Let me say download. I think we should have a JPEG image instead. Yeah, that's better. So JPEG. And then let's have another one. Let's download this one. Oops, I don't want that. Let's download this one. Download. And what is this? Why? I don't want such a large image. Come on. Let's download the small one for the sake of testing it out. Okay, save that. And then let's also re-download this. So download the small one to test it out. Paste that there. And then let's go ahead and upload them. So right here. So let's go ahead and upload these two images. So open, and then they should now upload. And invalid config, invalid file type. Invalid file type. Did I not? Oh, you know what? This should not say images. It should say image. That's why. Probably that's the reason why it also has a double S here. Okay. Okay. So probably even the button not showing is also my fault. I hope I figure it out by the end of the video. So let's try to re-upload those two again. Ideally, it should show a progress bar here, but we currently can't really see it. So what is that? So it's uploading. Did it finish? Let's check our backend. Let's try to just reload that. No files uploaded yet. Anything in our console? Bad request. Okay, it's saying bad request. Let's reload that. Okay, let's try that again. And then let's upload the images again. And then let's wait for that to upload. Okay, so it says the file was uploaded, but the callback failed. And then it says that we can check the upload thing dashboard. Let's check our terminal first of all, because we should be able to see something if I am not wrong. Okay, so there we go. So it says, is it getting, so it sends the URL. Let's shrink this down a bit. Let me read this. So we are getting back a URL here. Is this the correct URL for the thing? Let's try to copy it. Let's go on a new page. And okay, so it gets the uploaded thing. And of course, it has told us that the file has been uploaded. So there we go. So you can see that the route that it is using here is pet images. So it's saying that it uploaded, but the callback failed. And it's the same for this other image as well, which ends here. Okay. Okay. So there's a problem with our route, probably. And you know what? Actually, let me try something. Let's try to shut this down. Shut it down. And then let's delete the .next folder. So delete that. And then let's say npm run dev again, which is going to regenerate that folder. And then let's test out our application again. Okay, so let's now reload that. Okay, let's try uploading the images again. Let me try with only one. Okay, so still the same error. So let me figure this out before we can continue with the video. Okay, so I have made some progress. You can see that now the error that it is giving me is a bit different, where it says that I need to add this to my host names in next config. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I can explain what I have been up to. So inside next config right here, we need to go ahead and add images, and then remote patterns, and then we need to add hostname. We can accept this from every other hostname so that we don't get that error anymore. And then the protocol is going to say HTTPS, and then that should reload our application. Yeah, there we go. So restarting the server, and then we should be able to preview something. Let this start up first of all. Okay, so as you can see right now, we are getting a different kind of error, which says that we need to add this into our image host names in next config.js. So I've gone ahead and done that. So inside next config right here, I've added the images and then remote patterns. The hostname, I've set it into a wildcard so that we can accept images from anywhere, even though we are only using upload thing. And then the protocol that we're using is HTTPS. So that should trigger a reload of our server, as you can see right there. And then if we now check our upload thing dashboard, we should now be able to see the image that we have just uploaded right there. So uploaded. Now let me give you a walkthrough of what I've done. So first of all, inside our middleware.js file, inside our public routes, I have gone ahead and added the /API/upload thing route so that it is not blocked by our middleware. And then aside from that, inside our globals.css, I figured out why our button was not showing up correctly is because I had not added this into our CSS to style the upload thing button. So go ahead and add @import @upload thing /react /styles.css, and that is going to style the button correctly so that it appears as we expect it to appear. And then the third thing that I've done is inside our core.js, I've gone ahead and updated a few things about our core.js file. So now we are no longer importing metadata from layout. We are now importing the auth method from @clark_next.js server to get the actual data about the user who is logged in, or that to get the user ID of the person who is currently logged in. And then we have added middleware. So the middleware right here basically destructures the user ID from auth. And then if there's no user ID, we are throwing an error that says unauthorized, no Clark user found. And then we are returning the user ID, and whatever we return inside our middleware is now going to be used as the metadata inside our onUpload complete. So now we can destructure the metadata right here, and then we are logging that upload is complete. We are logging the file URL, and then we are logging that it was uploaded by this particular person. And then basically we return uploaded by, and then we're returning the user ID of the person who uploaded it. And then the file URL, we're also returning the file URL. So once you update all that, I don't think there's anything else that I've changed. Then we should be able to reload this. And actually, if we check inside convex, we should be able to see something inside our pets database. I mean, probably not for you because this was me testing it out. And we should see, okay, nothing has been uploaded, so probably it didn't work. So let's just test it out again. So let's open up the sidebar right here, the terminal. Now let me go ahead and add a bunch of things. You can see that now our button shows up correctly. Let me go ahead and fill this up, and then we can test it out again. Okay, so now let's try the uploading again. Let's go ahead and select those. And now you can see our progress bar right there. And then when you hover over it, you can cancel the upload if you want. Okay, so uploading. And now it should redirect us into the home page. Oh, sorry, not yet. Sorry for that, because when you click on add pet, then it should redirect us into the home page. you can see that right there now our images appear finally. Now, in case of different size images like this, I don't want them to show up like that. So let's go ahead and just tell them out. So that should be inside the upload thing, which is on line 300 and something right here. So the image is right here. So I'm going to give these images a fixed height and width of about 96 or size dash 96. That should be a square and small enough because we have also set object cover, so they should shrink down appropriately. Is that height 96? Okay, that looks bad. That looks ugly. Let's say width dash, let's say 64, and height dash, let's say 40. Let's say that. Let's see what it updates to. Yeah, much better. And then now when we click on add pet added successfully, and then it should redirect us into our profile page. So let's wait for the redirect, and there we go. And now you can see that I have one pet right there. We should correct that grammar, but now it shows the pet card component because that is what we're going to be working on next, so that it shows the actual image and then data about that pet. And then now if you check your pets database in Convex, you can see that the pet has been created successfully. Fantastic. So in the next video, let's go ahead and work on the pet card component. And before I forget, let's change this title. So inside our layout, let's change this title into portrait. That should suffice, and then we can continue in the next video.